Anyone listening to us today to think that just because you're involved in a court case that you should not seek help from the court, you know, if you are suffering through domestic abuse. But what I think we are trying to say here is, you know, contact your lawyer first and take care with this, because everybody is going to look at it a little bit more closely to make sure you're not trying to gain some unfair advantage. Is that right?
Right.
And tell us, Sean, I think it's interesting, you know, allegations of physical or even emotional abuse in a divorce case, that really impacts the children, doesn't it?
Absolutely. In looking at what happens, kids take a lot of responsibility on themselves for situations like that. And the question becomes, is it abuse between the parents? Is it abuse from one parent to the child? In those cases where we get to the point where it's contested custody, you have kids who might be suffering abuse who will protect the parent who's abusing them in some context. For whatever reason, they believe that they need to protect that parent from the court system. Right. And that's one of the jobs that at that point a guardian ad litem, if he's in the case, he or she is going to look at those issues, pull them out, and really bring that to the attention of the court right away.
Right, right.
You know, one of the unique perspectives is with the new Supreme Court rules, those are rules that have been put in place to define what a guardian ad litem is going to do. If there was a situation of abuse against a child, the guardian ad litem could go to the court and seek an order of protection if that was the case.
Right, right. Have you ever found yourself in that spot?
No, I haven't had to do
Not
that.
yet, anyway.
And I hope I never do.
Right, right. So then, if we have a lawyer for mom and a lawyer for dad, you're not the lawyer for the children.
No.
But you are looking out for their best interests.
Absolutely.
And Judge Sexton, how much faith or reliance do you put on the guardian's report to you?
A lot. Our guardian ad litems go through a training process. It's very rigorous. We only pick certain people to do it, and then the judges are only allowed to choose from that list of educated lawyers. And certain people do a tremendous job, and they get to be guardian ad litems frequently.
Right.
And we trust their opinions and their fact-finding abilities.
Right. Okay, so as guardian then, Sean, you are often put in the position of having to give more or less an objective opinion to the court, right?
Yes.
Right. So again, I think it's important to stress that we absolutely want to be careful in the divorce setting that we're not using the children to gain an advantage. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Right. So we should, although our domestic violence laws and rules are in place to protect our viewers, and we want to encourage them to utilize the resources available, we also want to make sure that they are not abused, because I think Tom pointed this out earlier that really, or maybe it was you, Judge Sexton, that it can have an impact on licenses and people's jobs and things like that, right? I wonder, Tom, if we could talk to you for a minute about what happens, what can you tell our viewers about what to do if you are wrongly accused of domestic violence?
Well, same thing you would do if you're wrongfully accused of anything. You go to court and defend yourself. If you can't, if it's a criminal case, if you can't afford an attorney will be appointed for you by the court. It's one of your constitutional rights. I think it's better to have an attorney representing you in court. It's very complicated, and that's something that people could, I think, effectively represent themselves at, you know, considering that they've got the state's attorney on the other side.
Right.
But if they're wrongfully accused, and that happens,
Yeah.
people are sometimes wrongfully accused, they should get in there and vigorously represent their interests and trust the court system to render a finding of not guilty.
Right. You know, let me ask each of you in these last few minutes. Sean, let me start with you. I'd like you to give us your top 2 tips. What would you recommend to parents who find themselves in a divorcing situation where there may or may not be domestic violence? Tell us, what recommendation do you give to them?
I think the first and foremost one is call the police. Most police departments in DuPage County have community service officers, domestic violence trained officers. They can come out there. They can serve to diffuse the situation. Sometimes even getting an officer out there and saying, hey, take a break for tonight. will diffuse the situation, especially when a spouse has just been served with divorce papers and they're angry.
And and otherwise document.
Well,
Very
absolutely
important.
document everything. That would be my second tip.
And Judge Sexton, how about your top two? What would you say if you were advising people out there?
For anyone who finds themselves as a defendant in a domestic battery case, Tom hit the nail on the head. Get a lawyer.